Section 57 of The Dream of the Red Chamber, Book 1. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Elizabeth Buchanan. The Dream of the Red Chamber, Book 1, by Cao Xueqin. Translated by Henry Bencraft Joly. Chapter 24, Part 2. But while the husband and wife were carrying on this conversation, Chia Yun had at an early period repeated several times, "There's no need to go to this trouble," and off he went, leaving no trace or shadow behind. But without passing any further remarks on the husband and wife of the Pu family, we will now confine ourselves to Chia Yun. Having gone in high dudgeon out of the door of his uncle's house, he started straight on his way back home; but while distressed in mind and preoccupied with his thoughts, he paced on with drooping head, he unexpectedly came into collision with a drunken fellow, who gripped Chia Yun and began to abuse him, crying: "Are your eyes gone blind, that you come bang against me?" The tone of voice, when it reached Chia Yun's ears, sounded like that of some one with whom he was intimate, and on careful scrutiny, he found in fact that it was his next door neighbour, Ni Erh. This Ni Erh was a dissolute knave, whose only idea was to give out money at heavy rates of interest, and to have his meals in the gambling dens. His sole delight was to drink and to fight. He was, at this very moment, coming back home from the house of a creditor, whom he had dunned, and was already far gone with drink, so that, when at an unforeseen moment, Chia Yun ran against him, he meant there and then to start a scuffle with him. "Old Erh!" Chia Yun shouted, "stay your hand! It's I who have hustled against you." As soon as Ni Erh heard the tone of voice, he opened wide his drunken eyes and gave him a look, and realising that it was Chia Yun, he hastened to loosen his grip and to remark with a smile as he staggered about: "Is it you indeed, master Chia Secundus? Where were you off to now?" "I couldn't tell you," Chia Yun rejoined. "I've again brought displeasure upon me, and all through no fault of mine." "Never mind," urged Ni Erh, "if you're in any trouble, you just tell me, and I'll give vent to your spite for you; for in these 3 streets and 6 lanes, no matter who may give offence to any neighbours of mine, of me, Ni Erh, the drunken Chin Kang, I'll wager that I compel that man's family to disperse, and his home to break up." "Old Ni, don't lose your temper," Chia Yun protested, "but listen and let me tell you what happened." After which he went on to tell Ni Erh the whole affair with Pu Shih jen. As soon as Ni Erh heard him, he got into a frightful rage. "Were he not," he shouted, "a relative of yours, master Secundus, I would readily give him a bit of my mind. Really resentment will stifle my breath; but never mind! You needn't however distress yourself. I've got here a few taels ready at hand, which, if you require, don't scruple to take; and from such good neighbours as you are, I won't ask any interest upon this money." With this remark still on his lips, he produced from his pouch a bundle of silver. Ni Erh has, it is true, ever been a rogue, Chia Yun reflected in his own mind, but as he is regulated in his dealings by a due regard to persons, he enjoys to a great degree the reputation of generosity; and were I to day not to accept this favour of his, he'll, I fear, be put to shame, and it won't contrariwise be nice on my part; and isn't it better that I should make use of his money, and by I can repay him double, and things will be all right. Old Erh," he therefore observed aloud with a smile, "you're really a fine fellow, and as you've shown me such eminent consideration, how can I presume not to accept your offer? On my return home, I'll write the customary IOU and send it to you, and all will be in order." Ni Erh gave a broad grin. "It's only 15 taels and 3 mace," he answered, "and if you insist upon writing an IOU, I won't then lend it to you." Chia Yun at these words took over the money, smiling the while. "I'll readily," he retorted, "comply with your wishes and have done; for what's the use of exasperating you?" "Well then, that will be all right," Ni Erh laughed; "but the day's getting dark, and I shan't ask you to have a cup of tea, or stand you a drink, for I've some small things more to settle. As for me, I'm going over there, but you, after all, should please wend your way homewards; and I shall also request you to take a message from me to my people. Tell them to close the doors and turn in, as I'm not returning home; and that in the event of anything occurring, to bid our daughter come over to morrow, as soon as it is daylight, to short–legged Wang's house, the horse dealer's, in search of me." And as he uttered this remark, he walked away, stumbling and hobbling along. But we will leave him without further notice and allude to Chia Yün. He had, at quite an unexpected juncture, met this piece of luck, so that his heart was, of course, delighted to the utmost degree. "This Ni Erh," he mused, "is really a good enough sort of fellow; but what I dread is he may have been open–handed in his fit of drunkenness, and that he mayn't, by and by, ask for his money to be paid twice over; and what will I do then? Never mind," he suddenly went on to ponder, "when that job has become an accomplished fact, I shall even have the means to pay him back double the original amount." Prompted by this resolution, he came over to a money shop, and when he had the silver weighed, and no discrepancy was discovered in the weight, he was still more elated at heart; and on his way back, he first and foremost delivered Ni Erh's message to his wife, and then returned to his own home, where he found his mother seated all alone on a stove couch spinning thread. As soon as she saw him enter, she inquired where he had been the whole day long; in reply to which Chia Yün, fearing lest his parent should be angry, forthwith made no allusion to what transpired with Pu Shih jen, but simply explained that he had been in the western mansion, waiting for his uncle's secondus, Lien. This over, he asked his mother whether she had had her meal or not, and his parent said by way of reply: "I've had it, but I've kept something for you in there;" and calling to the servant maid, she bade her bring it round and set it before him to eat. But as it was already dark, when the lamps had to be lit, Chia Yün, after partaking of his meal, got ready and turned in. Nothing of any notice transpired the whole night; but the next day, as soon as it was dawn, he got up, washed his face, and came to the main street outside the south gate; and purchasing some musk from a perfumery shop, he, with rapid stride, entered the Rongguo mansion; and having, as a result of his inquiries, found out that Chia Lien had gone out of doors, Chia Yün readily betook himself to the back, in front of the door of Chia Lien's court, where he saw several servant lads, with immense brooms in their hands, engaged in that place in sweeping the court. But as he suddenly caught sight of Chou Jui's wife appear outside the door, and call out to the young boys: "Don't sweep now, our lady is coming out," Chia Yün eagerly walked up to her and inquired, with a face beaming with smiles: "Where's aunt Secunda going to?" To this inquiry, Chou Jui's wife explained: "Our old lady has sent for her, and I expect it must be for her to cut some piece of cloth or other." But while she yet spoke, they perceived a whole bevy of people pressing round lady Feng, as she egressed from the apartment. Chia Yün was perfectly aware that lady Feng took pleasure in flattery, and delighted in display, so that hastily dropping his arms, he with all reverence thrust himself forward and paid his respects to her. But lady Feng did not even so much as turn to look at him with straight eyes, but continued, as hitherto, her way onwards, simply confining herself to ascertaining whether his mother was all right, and adding: "How is it that she doesn't come to our house for a stroll?" "The thing is," Chia Yün replied, "that she's not well. She however often thinks fondly of you, aunt, and longs to see you; but as for coming round, she's quite unable to do so." "You have indeed the knack of telling lies," lady Feng laughed with irony; "for hadn't I alluded to her, she would never have thought of me." "Isn't your nephew afraid," Chia Yün protested smilingly, "of being blasted by lightning, to have the audacity of telling lies in the presence of an elder? Even so late as yesterday evening, she alluded to you, aunt. Though naturally," she said, "of a weak constitution, you had, however, plenty to attend to; that it's thanks to your supremely eminent energies, aunt, that you're after all able to manage everything in such a perfect manner; and that had you ever made the slightest slip, there would have long ago crept up goodness knows what troubles." As soon as lady Feng heard these words, her whole face beamed with smiles, and she unconsciously halted her steps, while she proceeded to ask: "How is it that both your mother and yourself tattle about me behind my back, without rhyme or reason?" "There's a reason for it," Chia Yün observed, which is simply this: I've an excellent friend with considerable money of his own at home, who recently kept a perfumery shop; but as he obtained by purchase the rank of deputy sub prefect, he was the other day selected for a post in Yunnan, in some prefecture or other unknown to me, whither he has gone together with his family. He even closed this shop of his, and forthwith collecting all his wares, he gave away what he could give away, and what he had to sell at discount was sold at a loss, while such valuable articles as these were all presented to relatives or friends; and that's why it is that I came in for some Bero's camphor and musk. But I at the time deliberated with my mother that to sell them below their price would be a pity, and that if we wished to give them as a present to any one, there was no one good enough to use such perfumes. But remembering how you, aunt, had all along in years gone by, even to this day, to spend large bundles of silver in purchasing such articles, and how, not to speak of this year, with an imperial consort in the palace, what's even required for this dragon boat festival will also necessitate the addition of 100 times as much as the quantity of previous years, I therefore present them to you, aunt, as a token of my esteem." With these words still on his lips, he simultaneously produced an ornamented box, which he handed over to her; and as lady Feng was at this time making preparations for presents for the occasion of the dragon boat festival, for which perfumes were obligatory, she, with all promptitude, directed Feng Erh: "Receive Mr. Yün's present and take it home, and hand it over to P'ing Erh. To one," she consequently added, "who seems to me so full of discrimination, it isn't a wonder that your uncle is repeatedly alluding, and that he speaks highly of you; how that you talk with all intelligence, and that you have experience stored up in your mind." Chia Yün, upon hearing this propitious language, hastily drew near one step, and designedly asked: "Does really uncle often refer to me?" The moment lady Feng caught this question, she was at once inclined to tell him all about the charge to be entrusted to him; but on second thought, she again felt apprehensive lest she should be looked lightly upon by him, by simply insinuating that she had promptly and needlessly promised him something to do, so soon as she got a little scented ware; and this consideration urged her to once more restrain her tongue, so that she never made the slightest reference even to so much as one word about his having been chosen to look after the works of planting the flowers and trees; and after confining herself to making the first few irrelevant remarks which came to her lips, she hastily betook herself into dowager lady Chia's apartments. Chia Yün himself did not feel as if he could very well advert to the subject, with the result that he had no alternative but to retrace his steps homewards; but, as when he had seen Pao yü the previous day, he had asked him to go into the outer library and wait for him, he therefore finished his meal, and then once again entered the mansion and came over to the I Hsia study, situated outside the ceremonial gate, over at old lady Chia's part of the compound, where he discovered the two lads, Ming Yen, whose name had been changed into Pei Ming, and Chu Yu, playing at chess, and just arguing about the capture of a castle; and beside them, Yin Ch'un, Sao Hua, Tiao Yün, Pan Ho, these 4 or 5 of them up to larks, stealing the young birds from the nests under the eaves of the house. As soon as Chia Yün entered the court, he stamped his foot and shouted: "The monkeys are up to mischief! Here I am, I've come!" And when the company of servant boys perceived him, they one and all promptly dispersed, while Chia Yün walked into the library, and seating himself at once in a chair, he inquired: "Has your master Secundus, Mr. Pao, come down?" "He hasn't been down here all to day," Pei Ming replied; "but if you, Mr. Secundus, have anything to tell him, I'll go and see what he's up to for you." Saying this, he there and then left the room, and Chia Yün meanwhile gave himself to the inspection of the pictures and knickknacks. But some considerable time elapsed, and yet he did not see him arrive; and noticing besides that the other lads had all gone to romp, he was just plunged into a state of despondency, when he heard outside the door a voice cry out, with winning tone and tender accents: "My elder brother!" Chia Yün looked out, and saw that it was a servant maid of 15 or 16, who was indeed extremely winsome and spruce. As soon, however, as the maid caught a glimpse of Chia Yün, she speedily turned herself round and withdrew out of sight. But, as luck would have it, it happened that Pei Ming was coming along, and seeing the servant maid in front of the door, he observed: "Welcome, welcome! I was quite at a loss how to get any news of Pao yü." And as Chia Yün discerned Pei Ming, he hastily too ran out in pursuit of him, and ascertained what was up; whereupon Pei Ming returned for answer: "I waited a whole day long, and not a single soul came over; but this girl is attached to master Secundus, Mr. Pao's, rooms; and, my dear girl," he consequently went on to say, "go in and take a message; say that Mr. Secundus, who lives under the portico, has come." The servant maid, upon hearing these words, knew at once that he was a young gentleman belonging to the family in which she served, and she did not skulk out of sight, as she had done in the first instance, but with a gaze sufficient to kill, she fixed her two eyes upon Chia Yün. When she heard Chia Yün interpose: "What about over the portico and under the portico? You just tell him that Yün Erh is come, that's all." After a while this girl gave a sarcastic smile. "My idea is," she ventured, "that you, master Secundus, should really, if it please you, go back and come again to morrow; and to night, if I find time, I'll just put in a word with him." "What's this you're driving at?" Pei Ming then shouted. And the maid rejoined: "He's not even had a siesta to day, so that he'll have his dinner at an early hour, and won't come down again in the evening; and is it likely that you would have master Secundus wait here and suffer hunger? And isn't it better that he should return home? The right thing is that he should come to morrow; for were even by and by some one to turn up, who could take a message, that person would simply acquiesce with the lips, but would he be willing to deliver the message in for you?" Chia Yün, upon finding how concise and yet how well expressed this girl's remarks had been, was bent upon inquiring what her name was; but as she was a maid employed in Pao yü's apartments, he did not therefore feel justified in asking the question, and he had no other course but to add: "What you say is quite right; I'll come to morrow." And as he spoke, he there and then was making his way outside, when Pei Ming remarked: "I'll go and pour a cup of tea; and master Secundus, have your tea and then go." Chia Yün turned his head round, as he kept on his way, and said by way of rejoinder: "I won't have any tea, for I've besides something more to attend to." And while with his lips he uttered these words, he, with his eyes, stared at the servant girl, who was still standing in there. Section 57.